I know what some of you might be thinking. Yo, Sensitive Society, aka Sense, rent cannot be that high. I made a video yesterday, and towards the end, I said this. I'm out. I doubt I'm gonna make another Dr. Mike video. I'm not here to milk the situation. I just saw this, and I was just like, need to do a follow-up, wrap the story nice and clean. I thought we were done with this whole Dr. Mike situation, but apparently not. The situation is still very massive, if you will. I was reading the comments under my last Dr. Mike video, and some of you guys were telling me that he just dropped a full video response about the whole Jubilee, 1 doctor versus 20 anti-vaxxers. I haven't seen this video yet. I was waiting for all my amigos and amigas to pull up so we could all enjoy it while we're eating our hot Cheetos, Takis, Skittles, whatever candy you have. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I don't know if I should be telling you guys to eat unhealthy food while we're talking about a doctor. So if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Bangers all the time. I'm really looking forward to hear Dr. Mike's full perspective.
Is there anything I could say today that would change your mind?
I'm just asking your opinion.
I'm asking you a question.
Probably not, because I actually read and study.
I had a debate with 17 vaccine skeptics on Jubilee's Surrounded series, and it went on for 3 hours. It was an interesting experience for me. I learned a lot, as well as gained very valuable experience. But there were about 5 points that I felt were being repeated that I want to address today.
The fact that Dr. Mike did this for 3 hours, and you could see it from the start all the way towards the end when they're doing the post-debate interviews, despite the fact that he was trying his hardest to get these people to just understand or learn a little more to help people who are misinformed. And once again, major props to Dr. Mike for being able to just fucking be there. Because like I said on my last 2 videos, I could not do this. Dr. Mike will forever be a better man than me because I just would lose my I think within 40 minutes of realizing no matter what I tell these people, I could show them proof. I could bring the best doctors in the whole entire planet and they will still be sassy and be like, well, I actually read Dr. Mike, so no, there's nothing you can do to change my mind. Then why are you here? All 17 people, they had false information. And when Dr. Mike was telling them the truth, they didn't want to hear it.
My mother was vaccinated with the flu vaccine, and right after 3 days later, she received half of her face was paralyzed.
A through line through many of the conversations was people sharing anecdotes of someone having a negative reaction to a vaccine. I can't and I shouldn't really fact check that. I took everyone at their word. I thought everyone was discussing all of this in good faith. And then at the end of the day, vaccine side effects do happen. They're incredibly rare, especially serious ones, but they do happen. In fact, I had to highlight this during the episode, that when you compare how pharmaceuticals are treated in research versus vaccines, vaccines have such a higher level of scrutiny because they're given to healthy patients. As opposed to pharmaceuticals, we allow a chance of higher rate of side effects because we're getting the trade-off of a major benefit. When someone tells us that they started experiencing a medical condition after getting a vaccine and they attribute it to a vaccine, I think you need to be very careful and think, yes, about correlation and causation, whether or not 2 things happen at the same time or one caused the other thing to happen. A great image representation is this. I'll give you another second, is this. And also think about the natural incidents. For example, people who are 60 plus years of age have heart attacks. Now, if someone was to get a vaccine and then have a heart attack a week later, was this a natural heart attack or a vaccine-caused heart attack? How would we know? We would study those who have gotten vaccinated versus those who haven't and compare that natural incidence versus the incidence of people who have had vaccines. And if that rate goes up, now we start getting worried, we start investigating, we issue warnings.
I'm no doctor, right? I want to make that very clear. I'm just a YouTuber. But I could personally tell you that is 1,000,000,000% accurate. How do I know this? Back in 2020, 2021, when the whole pandemic was going on, my family, including myself, we all got vaccinated, right? And if you wanted to travel, if I'm not mistaken, you needed to be 2 or 3 times vaccinated. Now, I never got COVID, but my dad got COVID. Yet, he had the vaccine. And some people would say, you got the vaccine and you still got COVID. What is the point of this? It's useless. Who knows if my dad would have lived, if he would have gotten COVID and he didn't have the vaccine. On the original Jubilee video, one guy said something like, the people that died the most were vaccinated. And it's like, well, yeah, that is true. But the reason why that happened in the first place is because they were vaccinated. It's like if in 10 years I die of a heart attack and they're like, oh, well, he got vaccinated back in 2020. I doubt people are going to be like, oh, it's because of that vaccine, unless that cost it. And they do the studies and all of that, right? Am I saying that vaccines are perfect? No. Do they have side effects? Yes. Going back to when my dad got COVID, but he was vaccinated, and he's a doctor, by the way. If he would have gotten sick from COVID and he wasn't vaccinated, the chances of him dying were a lot higher, especially because he's not, in his 20s, 30s, or 40s. It's like, yeah, you still get sick, but it's like a shield. It's protection. It's the same thing with condoms. It's like, oh, dude, I used a condom and my girlfriend's still pregnant. Condoms do not reduce the chances of pregnancy by 100%. I believe it's like 95 to 98. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If you guys want true 100% protection, everyone knows that you got to use 2 or 3 condoms at the same time. So you actually have a 298% shot of not getting your girl pregnant. Trust me, I'll let Dr. Mike keep cooking because the stove is not only on, it's on fire.
We've actually issued warnings about vaccines in the past because of the careful monitoring we do as a form of post-market surveillance. Side effects versus benefits. Now, every time we do a medical intervention in healthcare, whether it's physical therapy, a surgery, a medication, a vaccination, we always want to think about the ratio of benefits to harms, and the benefits should always be outweighing the harms. And if we're not thinking about it, we're doing something wrong. He brought in some data, and he followed a pretty good and logical approach here. He said, why would I give my child this vaccine when in my area, there have been 0 pediatric deaths? I didn't fact check that, but even if there were pediatric deaths, they were very low from COVID-19. Why would I give my child a COVID-19 vaccine when, looking at the data, the pediatric deaths from COVID in his area were quite low, if not 0, when in the VAERS database, it looked like there were thousands of deaths from receiving the COVID-19 vaccine? Now, following that logic, you could say, why in the world would you make a child get vaccinated? Well, you have to understand what the VAERS database actually represents. This is a vaccine adverse events reporting system. It's an open, passive reporting system. When we count the deaths from COVID, we count the deaths through the CDC legitimate system that's actually monitoring death certificates, sometimes overcounting deaths, but they're actually doing the work to verify those deaths happened. On the VAERS side, when you're talking about these thousands of reports, they're not verified. There could be duplicates, there could be falsified reports, there could be reports of things happening as coincidences. What VAERS is useful for is if we start seeing a pattern emerge that is actively investigated by the CDC and the FDA, and then we're able to catch vaccine issues happening in the greater public. It's one of the data reporting systems that we use after the launch of a vaccination program.
That's the thing with living in society nowadays. Well, get it, because the channel is sensitive and we live in a society. Yeah, I came up with this thing when I was like 17 years old. Please do not make fun of me. Nowadays, there's so much information that you don't even know what's real or what's false. And it's low-key scary because you might think a news you see is legit. I think having too much information is an issue because then that allows for misinformation to spread like crazy, like we're about to see in the next segment. I know that it's easier said than done, but whenever someone tells you news, what I do in my personal life, whenever I hear a crazy news, I look it up. I try to look it up in a few different platforms because the mainstream media obviously has its favorites, whether it's the right or the left. Someone tells you that in Japan they don't vaccinate their kids until they're 2, which is a lie, by the way, but you don't do the research, and I'm not blaming anyone here. I've fallen victim to misinformation as well, and then you stay with that belief, and then you spread it to your friends, your siblings, your parents. It's just a consequence of the internet and a consequence of too much information being available.
In Japan, they don't start their vaccine schedule, I believe, until 2 years old. Autism is almost non-existent.
So they don't cause autism, you're saying?
Correct.
At all?
Correct.
Well, that's news to me.
You can't have a discussion about vaccines without the topic of autism coming up. And there is some truth to the fact that autism rates have gone up. And people have tied that to the fact that children get more shots than they did in the past. However, this has been very firmly established as correlation. And again, I'm going to show you this image because correlation does not equal causation. And I'm comfortable in saying this because there's been so much data disproving a causal relationship between vaccines and the rise in autism.
Please do not tell that to Facebook users. They will come after your life. I was vaccinated since I was a little kid. I don't know, I think I'm a pretty normal human being. I mean, I am a YouTuber, so maybe they are side effects to the vaccine. I've lived a pretty healthy life.
There's been a study in Denmark with over 500,000 children. There's been a study in California, in the UK. There's been a meta-analysis in 2014 that included 1.2 million children. There's been 20 plus studies on the subject, and they all uniformly agree that there is no causal relationship. The only time it's actually been even discussed has been by a fraudulent study done by the person named Andrew Wakefield, who's been discredited. The study has been debunked, and he's actually lost his medical license. And that was done on only 12 children. So are you gonna trust a research of millions of children across different international lines, or one dude who's been discredited based on 12 case reports?
Hopefully this finally puts the whole conversation about vaccines cause autism to bed. It is not a real thing. It's like millions of people have been tested. There's been over, 20, 30 tests done, and they cannot find a link. And a sus doctor that lost his license, who only did it with 12 patients, said yes. Please, people, not all of you, because all of the sensitive society enjoyers are big brain smart individuals, but I'm just saying overall, we gotta lay off Facebook and those insane conspiracy theories that your 50-year-old aunt is sharing. No, Sherry, vaccines don't cause autism. Misinformation is dangerous, and I fear as time goes on, it's only going to get worse, especially the way we're heading.
There was one thing though that the skeptics in the room said that got me pretty frustrated. They started saying that those who were accused of spreading misinformation, like the disinformation dozen, as quoted by one of the major newspaper outlets, were actually the divine dozen.
People say the disinformation dozen, I say the divine information dozen, because they were kind of prophets when you look at it. If you look back at their old claims, a lot of things that they said came true.
If a broken clock says it's 3:15, when in fact it's 12:15, I'm not gonna give that clock credit when it turns 3:15. I want it to tell me the accurate time when I ask it, not for it to end up turning out to be true. And the reason why this is important is because when you ask someone for an answer in the scientific community, they should answer you not based on what might happen in the future or their subjective thoughts on what might happen in the future. They should look at the data that exists now and make a decision based off that data. Those individuals who were accused of spreading misinformation made such a wide variety of claims that some of them ended up turning out to be true. But that doesn't mean we should in fact then begin to trust them.
It's the equivalent of just throwing everything at the wall and praying something sticks. And if out of those 1,000 times you land 1 or 2, it doesn't make you an expert. It means you got lucky. If not for you, do it for others. Do it for the people that are 60, 70 years old who have a higher risk of getting sick, and just be considerate for others, if not for you.
So we have to just take the expert to his word and trust it, right?
Well, when you fly in a plane, you're not in the cockpit.
Right. So we put our faith in that. So you would say that we just have to put our faith in the experts, correct?
Correct.
There's also some awkward moments of people saying, if I had faith that the people creating these vaccines were acting in good faith. But to me, that's interesting because when you call an Uber driver or you get a food delivery, you don't spend that much time thinking, are they acting in good faith? And both of those times, you're putting your life on the line. So I think you hope in a society that we live in that everyone's acting in good faith. But it really pushed me to the question of how do I know that vaccines work and that they do what the pharma companies say they do? Well, there's a lot of research that goes into that that's verified by independent review bodies. There's preclinical research, there's animal research, there's human research, there's post-market surveillance. We actually have a vaccine safety data net that reviews millions of doses of vaccines after they've been given to many more people than the initial research. How do I know they work? Well, where is smallpox? Where's measles? Well, that's changing for obvious reasons, but where's polio? Those diseases have been eradicated, and they've been eradicated because of the invention of vaccines. In fact, I find it a bit hypocritical from this community who's in this anti-vax space to be critical of vaccines because they oftentimes blame our healthcare system for being so reactive and not preventive.
When I think about our current healthcare system, where I think it needs to do better is it needs to focus more on prevention rather than cures. Agree or disagree?
1,000%, yes, sir.
Do you know how we can do that?
Not through the vaccines, but
Vaccines are preventive. We're doing the thing that you would want us to do, and yet you're punishing us for it.
At least for me, the question always goes back to who do I trust more? Who knows more? A doctor? Like Dr. Mike, or any one of these 17 insane people who have biases, who are treating this like a free therapy session. Use common sense when it comes to stuff like this. It's like, do not trust random ass people on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, especially with the amount of misinformation there is. It's okay to question things. Yeah, I thought this was a great video, and I'm glad he got to address some of the points. And on top of that, back that up with solid, real information, not fairy tales from Facebook conspiracy theories with like 10 members. He needs to write a book on how to control your anger or how to work with people like this. I would buy 2 copies of the Dr. Mike self-help book. But until then, what do you guys think of the situation? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, alright? Bye.